Once upon a time, in a vast and mystical forest, where the trees whispered secrets of the ages and the moonlight bathed the earth in silver, a woman found herself lost. She had journeyed far, her swollen belly bearing the weight of life within her. Exhausted and in pain, she stumbled deeper into the heart of the forest, seeking refuge. Alone beneath the towering trees, she gave birth to a baby girl. The labor was long and arduous, and though she cradled her newborn child with love, the woman was weak. She knew her time was short, and as the night wore on, she kissed her baby's soft forehead, whispered words of love, and took her final breath, leaving the child alone in the world. The newborn, fragile and helpless, lay on the forest floor, her cries mingling with the sounds of the wild. But the forest, as vast and untamed as it was, had its own guardians. That night, a great python, ancient and wise, slithered through the underbrush. It moved silently, drawn to the newborn's cries. The python, known to the creatures of the forest as a protector, approached the child, its massive, coiled body gleaming in the moonlight. It sensed the innocence of the baby and, with a deep, instinctual understanding, wrapped itself around the child, not to harm, but to shield her from the cold and the dangers of the night. For days, the python stayed by the child's side, its watchful eyes keeping vigil. It hunted quietly, bringing no harm to the creatures of the forest, yet ensuring that no predator came near the baby. The python coiled itself protectively around the child during the nights, its warmth keeping the newborn alive. The child, though alone, was never abandoned. Word of a strange feeling spread through the forest village nearby. The elders spoke of dreams filled with whispers, urging them to search the woods. One old woman, wise and sensitive to the spirit of the land, had a vision of a child lost in the depths of the forest. Guided by this dream, she ventured into the trees, following her instincts deeper into the forest than she had ever dared to go before. After many days of searching, the old woman stumbled upon the miraculous sight. There, nestled in the clearing, was the baby girl, alive and well. Her small eyes were open, and though she was weak, there was a calmness about her that surprised the old woman. But as she approached, she saw movement in the shadows, something large and slow. The python, sensing the old woman's arrival, quietly slithered into the underbrush, knowing the woman was here to rescue the child. It hid itself, watching from a distance, as the old woman knelt down and gently picked up the baby girl, marveling at her survival. The woman, though puzzled by the warmth around the baby, did not question the miracle that had saved the child. She took the baby in her arms and began the journey back to the village, her heart heavy with wonder and gratitude. She had no idea that in the shadows, the great python watched them leave, ensuring they were safe before retreating into the forest. Days turned into weeks, and the baby girl grew stronger under the old woman's care. The villagers spoke of her as a child of the forest, touched by the spirits. But what they did not know was that the python, her silent guardian, never forgot the baby it had once protected. Though unseen, the python visited the edge of the village often, watching from afar, ensuring the child's safety. It never revealed itself, for it understood that the human world was not its own. As the years passed, the girl grew into a curious and bright young child. She often wandered near the edges of the forest, drawn to the trees as if something called her back to the place of her birth. On quiet days, when the wind blew softly through the leaves, the python would appear at a distance, coiled beneath a tree, watching her with its ancient eyes. The girl, though she never saw it, always felt a strange comfort, as if something beyond her understanding was keeping her safe. And so it was. The bond between the girl and the great python remained a silent connection, born in the heart of the forest, unspoken and unseen. The python, the guardian of the wild, continued to watch over her, a protector in the shadows, ensuring that the child of the forest would grow, loved and protected, forever touched by the ancient magic of the wilderness. Years passed, and the baby girl, who had once been cradled by the forest and guarded by the great python, grew into a radiant young woman. She was known throughout the land not only for her beauty but for her grace and kindness. The villagers often whispered about her connection to the forest, saying that she was favored by the spirits and protected by forces beyond their understanding. There was something otherworldly about her, a quiet power and serenity that made her stand out among all others. As she blossomed into adulthood, her beauty and charm captured the attention of many suitors, but none as prominent as the king's son. The prince had heard of her beauty and spirit, and when he laid eyes on her, he was captivated. She was different from the courtly women he had known, grounded in the ways of nature, with a wisdom that seemed to come from beyond the human world. Their love grew quickly, and soon, the royal family announced their engagement. It was a union celebrated by all: the prince, the future king, and the girl of the forest. The day of the wedding arrived, and the entire village was alive with excitement. The royal palace was adorned with flowers and banners, and people from far and wide came to witness the grand celebration. The bride, dressed in fine silks and jewels, looked every bit like the queen she was destined to become. Yet, as the ceremony approached, deep in her heart, the girl felt a pull, a whisper from the forest that had been her true home. Though she had long left its depths, she knew it had never left her. As she stood before the altar, surrounded by the court, nobility, and villagers, a ripple of movement stirred in the trees beyond the palace grounds. The great python, her guardian since birth, had come. It had sensed the momentous occasion and had traveled through the forest to witness the union. It slithered silently, its massive form moving with grace and purpose, staying hidden from the eyes of the crowd, but close enough to observe the girl it had protected for so long. The bride felt its presence before she saw it. Her heart swelled with warmth, for she knew it was here, watching over her as it always had. As the wedding ceremony continued, the python coiled itself at the edge of the clearing, its golden eyes watching her with ancient wisdom. To those who were unaware, it was just another perfect day. But to the girl, it was a moment of deep connection, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had shaped her life. As the vows were spoken and the prince took her hand, the air around them seemed to shimmer. The python, understanding the significance of this moment, raised its head slightly, as if in silent blessing. The girl glanced toward the edge of the forest, her gaze meeting the unseen eyes of her guardian. A soft smile touched her lips, for she knew she was not alone, and that the forest had come to witness her happiness. As the wedding festivities reached their peak, with music and laughter filling the air, the mood shifted when villagers noticed the silent presence of the python at the edge of the palace grounds. Word of the massive serpent spread quickly, causing fear to ripple through the crowd. Some guests, especially those unfamiliar with the girl's mysterious past, were terrified, fearing that the python had come to bring harm or curse the celebration. But the python remained still, its golden eyes calm, its massive form coiled as if waiting for something. Whispers spread like wildfire, and soon the king, the chief priests, and the village elders were summoned. The villagers stood frozen, unsure of what to do, while the young bride, now a princess, looked toward the python with the calm understanding that only she possessed. She knew it had not come to harm anyone, but others needed to understand this too. The king, a wise and just ruler, approached cautiously, flanked by the chief priest and elders, who were revered for their wisdom and connection to the spiritual world. The priest, sensing the aura of the serpent, raised his hand to calm the growing fear. "It means us no harm," he said firmly, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "Let us listen." The python, sensing the presence of the king and the elders, slowly uncoiled itself. Then, something extraordinary happened. Its mouth opened. and though no words were spoken in a human language, a deep, resonant sound filled the air. It was not a hiss, but a low, powerful tone that carried ancient meaning. Only the chief priest, trained in the mystical ways of communication with the spirit world, could understand the python's message. The priest's eyes widened in awe as the python continued to speak, and he raised his staff high, commanding the attention of all. In a hushed voice, he began to translate the words for the king and the gathered elders. "The python speaks of destiny," the chief priest began, his voice trembling slightly from the weight of the message. "It says that this union, the marriage of the prince and the princess, was always meant to be. It was foretold long ago, written in the very stars. The girl, now our princess, was meant to marry the prince. But she would never have survived to see this day if not for the python's intervention." The villagers gasped, some still wary, others filled with awe at the revelation. The priest continued, his voice growing stronger with the python's words. "The python says, when the princess was a newborn child, alone and abandoned in the forest, wild animals would have devoured her had it not come to her aid. It watched over her, protecting her not out of obligation, but out of a debt an ancient favorite sought to repay." The king, intrigued, stepped closer and nodded for the priest to explain further. The python's story was not yet complete. 50 years ago, the chief priest relayed, there was a great and terrible war. It was a feared war, one that did not just affect men, but also the spirits of the land. In this war, the python lost its mother, killed in the chaos and bloodshed. The python was but a young creature then, lost and vulnerable. But a man from our village, a brave soul, found it and took it to safety in the depths of the forest. The man did not see a fearsome snake, but a lost soul in need of protection. He saved the python's life. The elders exchanged glances, recognizing the truth of the python's words. The memory of the war was still vivid in the minds of the older generations. And so, the chief priest continued, the python never forgot that act of kindness. It spent its years growing and watching over the village from afar. When it saw the newborn princess, it knew she was from this village, the same village where the man who had saved it once lived. The python took it upon itself to protect her as a way of repaying the debt it owed to that man. There was a silence, filled only by the soft murmurs of the crowd, who were now transfixed by the mysterious tale. The python shifted slightly, and the priest continued translating its final words. The python says that it has watched over the girl not just out of duty, but out of love. It loves her as if she were its own daughter, a bond that was forged in the forest all those years ago. It had no desire to harm this village or this wedding. It only came to witness the moment she found her happiness, to ensure that she would always be safe in the arms of her husband, the prince. As the priest spoke the final words, the python bowed its head slightly, a gesture of respect to the king and the village. The king, moved by the story, stepped forward and spoke with great reverence. "We thank you, guardian of the forest, for your protection and care. You have done what no one else could. You have saved my bride and brought her to this moment. The kingdom owes you a great debt." With the king's blessing, the fear in the crowd melted away, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude. The python, having said all it needed to say, slowly began to retreat, its massive form disappearing into the forest from which it had come. But before it vanished entirely, it turned one last time to the princess. In her heart, she felt its parting words, the quiet, enduring love of a creature that had been both protector and guardian throughout her life. The villagers watched in awe as the python left, a symbol of mystery, destiny, and a bond that transcended the human world. The princess, standing beside her new husband, smiled softly, knowing that though the python had returned to the forest, it would always be a part of her story, a silent guardian that had shaped her fate. From that day forward, the story of the great python's visit to the royal wedding and the destined princess became legend, told for generations as a tale of loyalty, destiny, and the mysterious ways in which debts of kindness are repaid.